Hey, you're with TheEZGZ. Welcome back to my garage, where we have a precise pattern of randomness. Where did we leave off? So yesterday we got cylinders 3 and 4 on and clearanced. This is cylinder 1. That worked out just fine. Got it in position. I'm on the last one right now. Thought I'd spend a little bit of time on it, a little more detail. If you look right inside the cylinder here, this is the counterweight that's creating the problem. And I must admit, at different points, I thought I had recalled seeing counterweights that this was ground with a taper and more pointed, which would offset it away from the bottom of my piston skirt. Here is what I believe to be, I'm not sure, but this was the original piston that came out of this engine. This was cylinder 1. I have it marked. This is a cast aluminum piston. It fits this 85.5 criteria. I think it's actually in here. It just says standard, and it has your typical arrow pointing towards the flywheel. It feels nice. We did a measurement on it. It weighs the similar. Everything's good. It appears to me, I saw dots on the flywheel as well as the pressure plate for balancing, and it's possible somebody had something on there. I'm looking for spots where a balancer may have cut it, and we're looking at that one right there. Now, let's hold it up. If you were to use a stock piston with this short rod, you can see, possibly, maybe not. It's too dark in there. Okay. The skirt area is a little bit wider. Let's take this over and do a comparison on the actual piston we're going to use. Okay? So here is a stock piston. Not too much different. Now you'll see in that left hand side here, there's a notch that I just made. Okay. Why are we even having an issue here? Let's go a little bit further. This is the much criticized, not as badly criticized as the 87 piston that creates a 1641, which is a very popular, no machine work needed choice of many people. And for going to the Dairy Queen, it's probably just fine. Longevity wise, maybe not so fine. Maybe this isn't going to be too good. If I was to drop this on the garage floor and bend this 30,000 thick lip, I would probably I'd probably just throw it away and buy something different. And at this point in time, we're going to try to make this work out. Looking at here's from a 90.5 piston and cylinder from the 1776 sand engine, and you can see where the balance marks are. The balancer took metal off in order to balance these, and I said it several times in previous videos where the balancer told me got it within a half a gram. That is such a bunch of BS. It is impossible to balance a Volkswagen air-cooled engine that close. Even if you took it in with your timing gears on, your distributor gear, your spacers, there are just things there, and the farther it goes from the center line out, your pressure plate, your flywheel, you try to get it close. Most engines aren't going to get that close. There's no way you're going to get no half a gram. If NASCAR, they're going to work real hard to try to get it that close. Let me get out my one of my favorite tools. I'm going to probably wear this thing out. These are my decimal equivalent charts. Here's something I got from my dad, or found in my dad's stuff. This is a real handy tool. This is a fraction to decimal equivalent tool. Isn't that neat? I don't know if it does it on camera, but when you look at it in person, see, you could take that, let's take a 3/8, and then you just flip it, then the decimal equivalent is 0.375. Ain't that cool? Cool tools. Just by, they used to have all kinds of toys that would do that. You hardly ever see that. This was from the Snap-on tool dealer. This was probably back from the 50s, guys. Wow. Cool stuff. Anyhow, let's not get too far off topic. You can definitely see the wear pattern. You can see where the piston's normal operating range was. The skirt probably came down here, but you weren't getting a lot of wear. Now, on this one, we're going to look at it, and you look down here, and you look over here, and you say, gosh, that's about 100 thousandths? No. Okay, let's just come back and look at it. Focus, focus. So now we start to close it. It was 100 thousandths. So the cylinder wall thickness where it goes into the case is 100 thousandths. And on this one here, it's only, let's see, worst case scenario, 45 thousandths. Let's get at one of these stock cylinders as long as we're doing comparisons. It's kind of neat to have all this stuff handy and out here at the same time to really get an accurate look at what all the fuss is about. I just had it in my hand. I should have put it in my apron pocket, huh? Then I wouldn't lose it. Okay. Alright, so standard. And this probably isn't the most precise way to measure this. 80 thousandths. My 88 slip-ins is, come on, 35. And the 90.5 is 100 thousandths. Now, you have to get machine work done in your case in order to fit this larger cylinder, and that's why you can get a thicker area here as well. Does that make sense? Now they're making all kinds. Classically, nobody wanted 94s or 92s because they were thinner all the way through. And I think on a 1641 87 millimeter, the traditional option, it was thin all the way through. Look at the area where the fins are. See? The fins get these are the cooling fins. They're not very dramatic at the base. This is where all the heat is up here, and this is where all the wear is. Same thing. Look at the wear line on this 1600, this 85 piston cylinder. So I don't see at this portion of the cylinder base, even though it's only 35 thousandths thinner, I don't know what's going to go on here. Now let's flip them over. Let's look at this side. Okay. Oh boy. I don't want to mix all this stuff up either. Okay. This is more, this is how thick it is. This is 180 thousandths thick at the top of the standard Volkswagen 85.5, okay? Now, come over here to this new 88 slip-in, and it is almost 200 thousandths. 200 thousandths. It's hard to do this through the viewfinder. So it's about 25 thousandths thicker, and that's all the way down the cylinder. Not the part that goes into the case, but the thickness up and down where the work is being done. This is going to trap heat. It's going to be more solid and more closer to tolerance during operation, absorbing and rejecting heat, in my thinking, better than the stock one. Now, let's put the 95.5 upgrade in there. Okay, 145. thousandths. A 170. And 195. So, time will tell. Now, this is the Eutectic cast piston. And people complain about that. Why would they complain about that? It's a modern aluminum product that's probably in the everyday car that you drive if it's an American car. Because of the EPA, they wanted to get tighter and closer tolerances. And as the years have progressed from the 60s onward, they've always had stricter and stricter emissions requirements. One of the ways the automotive industry met those requirements was by having tighter engine tolerances. One of the main places that you get blow-by and leakage is between the piston rings and cylinder walls. They could make a tighter spec piston using this aluminum formula because it has more silicone in it. Where did we put the piston from the stock piston? Where did we end up leaving that? Over here. Okay. This cast piston, this old Volkswagen original cast piston, of course this one's used and this one isn't, but this has probably about 12% silicone in it, and probably other alloys, who knows. This Eutectic piston could go as high as 25% silicone. This is a forged piston, which means before it totally solidified, it was put in a mold and hammered into shape. This one was cast into a rough shape and then machined. This one was hammered into a shape. It changed the grain structure. It's tougher in some ways, but it's not it's better for racing than it is for the street. And boy, I'm taking a lot of chances here, getting way over my head. I am not the engineer graduate. My older brother graduated from Penn State in 1975 as an engineer. He has worked off and on for different segments of General Motors and the automotive industry all of his working career, and he's older than I am, likes his job, and decided to continue working. I don't know why. Likes to spend money too. So, what he told me when he graduated from college in 1975 is they taught to design things with a 50% safety margin. That means when you're looking at stresses and loads of different types, whatever you feel is the mathematical requirement for the job, add 50% to it, and that's how they hit the road. So they had a 50% safety margin. It's my understanding, because of what he's told me, that today in college they teach you that 20% is good enough. I assume that's because we have closer tolerances and the ability to mass produce things at closer tolerances in general. When it comes to these pistons, one of the drawbacks of having a Eutectic cast piston is that it is brittle. It's harder, keeps its shape better under load, but it's brittle. It can break. It can't take the abuse. It has it will break. It will come apart. It does not tolerate detonation very well at all. But easy. Why would with all the millions of American cars out there with V8s and V6s, multi-cylinder engines, why would they use a piston like that? As we said, the EPA would be one motivator, but the other thing is computer controlled. Electronic fuel injection. They can more precisely control the timing and the fuel rate with computers than they could back in the day when there were carburetors. Carburetor, electronic fuel injection, and timing management. They can pretty much safely rule out that timing going bad. They have knock sensors to tell them in some engines when it's occurring, so they can change the specifications. Seems to me though the aftermarket offers chips that allow you to modify those. So now we have a bunch of people that like high performance. They want to be faster than the guy next door, so they alter the timing, and they alter this and they alter that. With modern engines, even if you put poopy fuel in them, the O2 sensors and things can sense that and make corrections. You'll notice it in your fuel mileage, you'll notice it in the power range, especially when you live where I do, 5,000 to 8,000 feet above sea level. So there's a whole bunch of variables in here, but when people do have failures, it's like anything else. The loudest voice in the room is the one that gets heard most, and when good things happen, people don't necessarily shout out about it and brag about it. They expect it. I paid a lot of money. I expect to have a good quality car, and I expect to have 200,000 or plus miles. When I got my driver's license back in the 60s, if a car made it to 100,000 miles, you were doing good maintenance, and by then you're going to need everything. You're going to need suspension, brakes, tranny work, you name it, the whole front end, all those types of things. You did maintenance on a car that was in the 50s. I remember that old 52 Ford I started in. It didn't seem like we did too many oil changes. The way that thing burned oil and leaked oil, it seems like we added more oil than we have actually changed it. But it always had good oil in it because of that, right? But every now and then we'd pull it in the garage and we'd change the oil. There was probably 15 grease zerks on that thing. Maybe not, that might be an exaggeration. There was a lot, let's just say there was a lot of grease zerks on the front end. A-arms, upper and lower, drive shaft, steering, tie rod ends. There were zerks all over that thing, and my dad would always come down and find one that we'd miss because it'd be so covered up with goop that you'd have to pinch off the dirt and crud before you could find the zerk. So, wow. It's hard for me to keep up. This is killing me. Weren't we talking about Volkswagens? The harmonics. Harmonics on the springs. Harmonics on the valve springs is more severe with the stock 1-to-1 ratio rocker on a performance cam than a ratio rocker of, say, 1.4. Does that make sense? There's different things going on here. And one of the main purposes of having like dual spring heads, this isn't the best situation here where it slides like this. It should be a little bit more of an interference fit. And I can show you on the valve springs that were on the 1776. Let's see if we can grab one and find. Okay, look right in here on this spring. You see the shiny spot? Is it showing up in the video here? See that shiny spot down there? That reflection? Look as I turn it. It's right up here by my fingertip. See that? Now and these are the old Berg springs and retainers. They were held real good in the retainers, but the main objective of that inner spring was not so much to increase the spring pressure, it was to control those harmonics and vibrations. And you see where it's gotten rubbed off and polished off, probably because the lifter bores and who knows what. But one of the things that happens in these little engines is that metal starts floating around. Those little tiny filings from all that harmonics and carbon and just things rubbing against each other. Maybe a little piece of sand, I don't know how that would get in there, but a little grain of sand would scratch something and that little rough edge would get rubbed off. So what a lot of guys did in their Volkswagens, none of the people in my crew, but in the Berg books, it talked about using these cow magnets. And I bought this at the hardware store, and you would put it in, if you had an extra sump underneath your engine, you have to extend the tube. Where's the one that I bought for this engine? Right here. Okay. I bought a deep sump to add to this engine. I didn't know it was going to have this huge base, but that might turn out to be an okay thing. But what the Berg books, and I did it in that 1776 when I first got it, but I started riding in the rocks and I decided to take it off. This is an extension from your oil pickup for 2 different years. They had 2 different size tubes or more, and that tube would extend it down into the sump, and then Berg suggested that you take a hose clamp and you clamp it to that pickup tube. Let's see, where have I got one of those? Yeah, we got one right here, don't we? Man, it's nice having all this stuff here when we're going to go on an internal discussion. That extension would fit right on this tube, and you put a hose clamp on it. Now you've got an extra 1.5 quart underneath here, and you'd take this cow magnet and you would hose clamp it to that. That way it would be a little easier on your pump. Hopefully you're running a full flow oil system with an external oil filter, and as the oil has to come from this crankcase down into the lower crankcase, hopefully those medical particles would get caught on there. If you look on my Manx style buggy, the tub buggy as I call it, I took a magnet and I put it on my external oil filter. I just put it on the sheet metal. It's heavier than a refrigerator magnet. I need to get one of those rare earth magnets. It's killer. You could clamp these. You could put several of these around the tin of your metal oil filter, cartridge oil filter, and that would help trap some of those fine metal particles and keep them from getting redistributed to the engine. But the idea of putting it on down here was to catch it before it went through your oil pump, because they always suggested on a high performance engine or something that accelerates faster than stock to take the screen, the stock oil filter screen that went in here. Let's see if I got one of those sitting around here. Since I've got everything else laying around here. Boy, the bearings came out nice on this engine. See, I could put this crankshaft. This is 20 under crankshaft. I'd have to get different bearings, but I do have a stock crankshaft that looking for parts here. You're probably getting a real crazy ride. Woohoo! I'm not seeing. Oh, here's one right here. I knew I had one. If you just can hang in there with me, we'll find all of this stuff. See? For those that don't speak Volkswagen, this is all the stock Volkswagen had for an oil filter. But it's cleverly designed, because when it shuts off, most of those metal particles would sink to the bottom, and every time you took one of these things out, you would have junk on that cover plate. Oh, you want to see some killer junk? Look at this. Honest to God, I swear to God, this is not a setup. This is what was in my son's 1300 engine right here. This is the original engine that was in Valerie. Would you look at that? Isn't that totally unbelievable? Now it had a bad connecting rod. That looks like solid dirt. Oh, that car must have been running at the end of its life with this in its arteries. Is that unbelievable or what? So what you had, this is so cool. I'm so glad I can share this with everybody just to show them, and it's just another example of how amazing these little engines were and how much abuse they could take. So your filter went up in that, and then this cover captured it, and this one had a hole, probably had a magnet, a little plug for a magnet. But see, there would be room. You could probably, if you could, yeah, you could stick it to that. You could probably just lay that thing in there, trim this thing down, have it so it lays underneath there, and it would trap it. But the thing of it is, your pickup is still inside the screen area. Just a testimony to how tough these little engines are. And you know, I'm getting tired of talking, and you're probably getting tired of listening. I got thousands more of these kinds of stories. But this isn't getting my engine built, and tomorrow's Monday. I'd like to get this thing over to that balancer, so I got to fit up these pistons and make sure I'm not hacking any more off before I take it to somebody and have it spun balanced. So, thanks for watching. Thanks for subbing. TheEZGZ out!